All right, there we go.
All right. So a little bit about me, and I think the first important caveat, based on what Milan was just saying, is that I don't claim expertise, right? I'm not a data scientist, but I do claim experience, right? I've used AI quite a bit. I continue to use it daily, and I've seen a pretty profound impact on my productivity. And I've also noticed that others, not everyone seems to be experiencing that. So in that conversation at Agile Main, we were wondering, hey, what could we offer up that would be relevant to what's going on right now in the world? So there's this massive AI bubble that everyone's trying to get involved with, right? And everyone's being pressured to keep up using the tools, understand, right? There's this common phrase, if it's not that AI itself is going to take your job, but someone using AI might. Um, so that was kind of the inspiration for me when I put this together, was just to help others who maybe aren't quite experiencing the same impact as I am, just give them some interesting tips, tricks, mental models, the foundation for productive use. So a little bit about me. My name's Ian. I live in Windham, Maine. Professionally, I work primarily for WEX. We do interesting things with payments and fleet management, pretty deep in that space. I recently founded a company that's a Maine-based startup. We're called Viridian Guard, and we're focused on digital sovereignty for small and medium businesses as a service, which is very interesting and up and coming. Um, Personally, I'm all the things, right? And I'm continuing to become new things over time because I truly am engaged in a personal process of continuous and ongoing improvement. So for all you theory of constraint fans out there who might be familiar, I realized that I was the constraint for my family, and that kicked off this journey for me, and I've been learning and growing and experimenting ever since. Um, so that's how I acquired some of this experience that I'm going to share with you today with regard to AI. So what's in it for you guys? These are at least what I aspire to. Ultimately, my goal is to help you acquire a foundation to actually see the productivity impact that you've everyone's talking about, right? So to do that, we're gonna first demystify the black box. We'll talk about just at a really high level how LLMs work, and hopefully that'll help you figure out how to talk to them better. We'll talk about some of their limitations, right? And then later on, we'll get into what to actually do about those when you encounter them. I'll give you some tips and tricks and what I consider very important foundational mindset, sort of a playbook, right, to help you engage better and get better results from your LLM usage. And then ultimately, when you leave here, I will share a file which contains a master prompt, which is what's known as a meta prompt. So it's a prompt that helps you write awesome prompts. And we'll talk about that a little bit why later. But that is a powerful tool. I call it my superpower, and I use it daily to spin up any kind of expert I need to talk to for any situation I'm in. Yesterday, actually, this morning, I spun one up to talk to a mechanic about how to change the oil in my snowblower. So, like, that gives you an example of like how diverse and broad in terms of like helping you achieve things AI can be, right? It's really powerful. We'll get into that. So, brief agenda. We'll talk again. We'll go through the mechanics and limitations. We'll talk about mindsets and techniques. And so, the beginning is just going to be a little bit of me talking at you, but feel free to interrupt with questions and such. I really value dialogue and feedback. This isn't a lecture, so if you want to speak up and raise your hand, cut me out. Feel free to do so. And then the last important bit, we'll get into systems thinking and which is really the foundation of agentic, what they call agentic AI. And then in part two, I'll actually share my screen. I'll bring up Gemini, which is the Google Gemini, which is the LLM tool that I primarily use, uh, and we'll use the prompt architect together. So, which will be cool. You guys will get to see it in use. We'll generate some prompts. We'll play with those prompts, and I'll kind of show you, hint at the power of meta prompting. So before we do that, though, it'd be great if I would like you guys to take a moment to do some ideation. So we're going to use what's called a chat waterfall technique, which means you need to bring up the chat in Zoom. So please bring it up, and then just use these questions as maybe a prompt to get you thinking. So what is a situation in your mind where you think using an LLM might help you perform better or faster or more thoroughly, right? Or what objective might an LLM improve your ability to achieve? how could you, in your mind, let's put some ideas in here where you think an LLM would be useful?
Maybe, and just not everybody might be familiar with LLM term, and just maybe broadly.
AI. Like think about ChatGPT or Claude. I mean, when I say LLM, I just mean AI. So I want to see what people are thinking about because maybe I can use one of these when we do a demo. Like, how do you think, or how have you tried to get AI to help you do something? To do what precisely? So Caitlin says took notes from requirements and asked for a phase one project plan. That's cool. Supplement ideas for designing a class for a specific topic. Employee reviews, project reporting. Yep. In developing flows and Power Automate, very nice. I use it with app scripts, generating ad hoc training or guidance. I use it to help me build this training, help product partners better define KPIs. Very good. That's an excellent one. Tailor my resume. That's super good. Marketing plan, meal plans for my family. Awesome. That's really cool. Meeting agendas, absolutely. Business cases. I've been using it for that too to help really articulate things crisply. Data analysis, not bad at that in my experience. Jira ticket, condensing long reports. Nice. There's a lot of good stuff.
Yeah.
Analysis of agile metrics. I've also used it for that. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I just used it yesterday to and the class before where I created a prompt where people practice using grow model to coach, have AI coach them instead of like a professional coach.
Yeah.
I'll put that actually prompt in the chat just that maybe later on people can you can try it, but I've been messing around with that as well.
Yeah. It's pretty cool for that to use it as a dialogue partner
Yeah.
to help you prepare for an interview or prepare for an annual review or practice giving a speech that you're about to give. There's all kinds of interesting things when you start to get creative. I saw a couple too about writing. Aileen just put one in, drafting acceptance criteria. I saw someone else taking a roadmap, Laura taking a roadmap, creating initiatives, epics, and stories. That's a really powerful use case. Um, so cool. You guys, there's no lack of creativity I can see in the room among, with regard to like how these things might be helpful to us. All right. So let's get into like how they actually work. And again, I'm no data scientist, but I do know some. And we actually have a guy at WEX named Max Auger, who's a professional prompt engineering coach. And so he's been incredibly helpful for me in learning about AI. And so some of this is kind of inspired by him, right? So the key thing to understand, right, is that AI does not think. LLMs are predictors. It's all about probability. They take a word and they break it into a couple character bits called tokens. So a token is just a couple characters of information. And all they're doing is looking at the tokens in the conversation and trying to predict what the next most likely token is going to be. And they're generating strings of text based on that. So they're not thinking about anything. And this is really important to remember when you're using AI, and I'll explain a little bit why later when I show you kind of some of the techniques to deal with some of the problems you'll run into. So like if you think about the phrase, the sun rises in the right, it could be morning, it could be sky, it could be summer, but most likely it's probably going to be east. And that's probably what's going to show up unless your input, your prompting specifies something, some other things that would make it less likely for it to be east. So precision is key, right? What you get back is only as good as what you put in. How you prompt and how precise you are and how well you're able to articulate what you mean is really important. I've heard a lot of people say like AI, in the age of AI, communication has become one of the top skills that you can have. How clearly can you express meaning or what's your intent, to something else, in this case, the large language model. And then the last thing is just that you should, be aware of in terms of the mechanics is that these things operate in what's called a context window. So when you bring up ChatGPT or Gemini and you open a chat, that chat is a unique context window. And the AI doesn't know anything about any of the other chats that you've had, right? It doesn't know anything outside of that about its engagement with you outside of that context window. So it's kind of like starting fresh, right? Every time you open a new chat, it's almost like you're starting a completely new dialogue. So let's talk about the four primary limitations that at least I've experienced, right? Everyone knows about hallucination. You hear about it all the time. It's pretty straightforward. This is where the AI prioritizes sounding right over actually being right. This happened to me actually yesterday. I had it helping me with a task, and it was telling me all these things that I just knew were just clearly wrong. And it was obvious looking at what I was doing that it was completely wrong. Um, so you have to pay attention for that. Like it's not just the buzzword in the industry. It will happen. Most of you have probably experienced it to some degree. The second, which actually causes some level of hallucination, is what they call context dilution. So when you're in and you're using an LLM, right, and you're in a context window, so a chat, and you're talking, and as the conversation goes on, you might take different paths in your conversation. You might make a mistake. You might be iterating over some kind of thing that you're drafting, and the more you'll notice at some point that the thing starts to lose kind of the thread, right? It's like almost like it's not really doing it. It'll repeat itself. Weird things will happen, right? And it's because the context windows carried on so long. Remember, it's trying to predict based on what's been said in that window so far, right? So when things get, when the lines get crossed, it will start to get confused. Um, so that's kind of the essence of context dilution, and it happens all the time. I experience it daily. Um, these two, I'm sure you've heard about. They're really important to keep in mind. Sycophancy, right? Like these things are very. I'm sure. I hope you've experienced this because it's quite humorous. But basically they'll tell you whatever you want to hear. And the same with bias amplification, right? So they'll amplify because they're trained on all this vast, unfiltered data across the internet about humans, right? Humans are a diverse lot, and so there's some stuff in there that will cause it to potentially take on and amplify certain biases, right? It'll amplify your own biases, because of the nature of the sycophantic nature that you probably have experienced. So I've heard it said that critical thinking is the most important skill in the quote unquote age of AI, and I believe that, right? Don't believe your eyes, right? Use your brain first. Challenge, question. So let's get into what I've experienced in terms of like helpful mindsets. The first is this, right? So like there's been all this talk about AI is going to replace humans, does stuff for you, right? But my experience is not that, right? AI is an augmentation of yourself, like any tool, right? Before you had a hammer, if someone gave you a nail, it would be impossible for you to put it into a piece of wood, right? That'd be really hard. You'd be pressed on, it doesn't work, right? Give you a hammer, you now have a new possibility, a new capability. You can slap that piece of metal right through wood. It's the same thing. This is a really useful tool. It unlocks capabilities and possibilities that you didn't have before, but it requires a human to use it, right? So one way that is helpful to think about it is like cognitive scaffolding, right? It's really good at researching, going across, pulling all kinds of interesting information in to get kind of a body of information to then analyze, synthesize, and ultimately draft communications with. It's awesome for working with language. So, you know, for me, this mental model, not expecting AI to do stuff for me, has been really helpful, right? Expecting it to help me do stuff, and so engaging myself with whatever I'm doing and not kind of delegating it, just realizing I have this really powerful partner who, if I'm confused or I'm uncertain or I have questions or I want to explore all these different options and try to figure out which one's the best and why, it's super powerful at helping me do those things, but doesn't do it for me. So this comes from Max at Wex. Um, this is the Achieve framework. I provided it in the slide deck because I think it's a useful anchor for thinking about how AI can be helpful to humans. So that's all it is. It's just I didn't come up with this. Again, it was provided to me. I put it in here so you could have it for your review, but it talks about aiding human coordination. So using AI to improve teamwork, communication, and alignment. Somebody mentioned this in the chat waterfall. For instance, you could be transcripting a brainstorming session. You can take that transcript and immediately synthesize a list of interesting ideas that were talked about, what you might do with them, action items. Very powerful for that kind of thing. You can cut out tedious tasks. So for instance, again, if you had a transcript, you could put a summary email, key decisions and action items, things that used to take quite a bit, you can do in seconds. Safety net, that's about like, I don't know, helping you kind of inspect your own ideas, right? Point out potential conflicts or unrealistic durations, for instance, in a project plan, or help you provide, maybe other options, other angles, perspectives that you're not looking through at a specific problem to help you come up with maybe novel solutions, right? Very powerful in that regard. And that kind of gets into the IEV of achieve, which is better problem solving and creativity, right? Like I find personally as an ideation partner and a thinking partner, that's where for me, the real power lies in my use of AI, right? It's amazing at providing a vast array of different perspectives that I wouldn't have considered, right? That I just don't have. Um, and that's kind of speaks to the last one too, which is about taking an idea, then rapidly iterating on it and then leveraging it, right? Generating communications, plans, all the things that need to happen when you're working in large companies or large groups of people where you're trying to get alignment and direction. So take a look at this. Again, I'll provide the deck so people have it to kind of review, but it's been helpful for me in terms of coming up with creative ways to use AI in my daily work.
Hey, and just quick note, somebody drew on the board, so the way to get rid of these two lines will be to stop sharing and then start sharing again, and they'll go away.
Okay, let me do that really quick. Uh,
I'm assuming everybody can see the red lines. I'm not.
yeah, I see it. How do I stop sharing? Oh, there we go.
Yeah,
Stop
on the
share.
bar, yeah, and then
Screen share, share two. Okay, should be back.
yep.
Okay. And so another important piece of the mindset when you're using these things, and I've heard, I imagine all of you have come across this, but it's really important. This in the industry term that they're using is human in the loop, but it's really simple, right? Like again, critical thinking is the number one skill in the age of AI. Every output you have to scrutinize. Then that word, I love that word because it's perfect. You have to scrutinize. You have to apply your own logic and your intuition and challenge the AI. Don't just take whatever it says and oh yeah, that must be how it is. Like no, think, scrutinize, right? And it's that feedback loop that is so powerful, right? Um, the AI will give me content. I'll provide a bunch of feedback. Well, that's maybe right. That looks a little wrong. What do you think about this? And then we'll iterate together to get to really good results. Um, and the last two, protect and oversee. I mean, it's pretty straight. Like, in working with WEX, it'd be a bad idea to put financial information in there, right? Or people's personal account information or health data, right? Like, so you really, it's just common best practices with regard to information security. And then this oversee, like ultimately, when we think about who's responsible for what happens as a result of AI uses, it's you, it's the user. So again, scrutinize heavily. Um, so let's get into, for me, what's been the most helpful stance with regard to my own usage of AI. Um, so the foundation of effective usage is context, right? Context is everything. So the fundamental rule is about when you're engaging with an AI, provide that full context, right? For me, I just orient myself to them like I would a human. If a new colleague came in the office and they were going to help me with a spreadsheet, I wouldn't throw it at them and say, write spreadsheet better, right? I'd say, hey, this is a spreadsheet. It does this. We're in this situation, and this spreadsheet is a list of the project plans. And I work for this. WEX does. We're in the mobility business in this case, and we're trying to put together a project plan for this strategic initiative, which is this, and our goal is this, and this. So you would give the context of what's actually going on, right? So for me, and maybe it sounds completely silly and stupid, but it's been really powerful, is just treat the thing like a human. Talk to it like if it says something crazy, say, hey, that was pretty crazy. If it does something weird, say, yo, that was weird. Why did you do that? Right. But again, still scrutinize, right? Remember, it's not actually thinking, it's just predicting next most probable token based on what's going on. But it turns out language is really, is pattern oriented. So it does, it's really feels like it's thinking. So yeah, take that one to heart. And interestingly, I saw this funny meme recently, which had like a Terminator type of bot who was the boss of the Terminators and two others holding a human, and they were about to like off him, and the lead bot says, "Stop! 3 years ago, he said please in one of his drops." So I always remember that, right? And I do actively say please and thank you because I don't know, it's just how I was raised. All right. So this is another method that came from some of the AI accelerator training that I received, in the support I received at WEX. This is with regard to writing prompts. It's essentially what we just said. Context is everything. So this is just a simple, and I put it in here for your reference. Again, we'll provide the slide deck and you can refer to it. But this just kind of describes the good elements of a prompt. So define the context and explicitly state the task, clearly pinpoint why, the goal, and describe the specific outcome, specify the output format, any constraints, design, So this is just a way to say, like, when you're interacting with an LLM, if you include all these elements and think about this, you'll provide good context and you'll get good outputs. This R part is really important. Revise and iterate on your prompt. So just because you came up with an interesting prompt and put it in, you might get weird results, right? Results that maybe aren't quite what you wanted. So go back and iterate on the prompt, right? It's a effective usage in my experience has been all about iteration, which should speak naturally to the Agile main crowd. Okay, a couple other techniques, and I won't spend too much time here. Um, persona power for me is the most powerful technique. It's like I mentioned with the snowblower, or here's another use case, right? Like I need to seal coat my driveway. I don't know how to do that. So I spun up very quickly using my meta prompt an AI helper who's a master seal coater and tells me exactly what I need to buy, how I need to do it, right? If I want to learn how to bake sourdough bread, which is something that happened recently, I spun up a expert chef to like help. So what you're doing when you're assigning a persona is just the AI is filtering. It's like a specialized lens, right? So it's filtering all its vast training knowledge based on that lens. So it's a super powerful technique. Temperature control is an interesting thing to understand. So like we mentioned that these things don't think, they predict. So temperature control is like how probable do you want me to, how focused on the highest probability next token do you want me to be? So if temperature is high, it will, you know, um, be super creative, right? It will not necessarily fixate on what's the most next probable thing, and ultimately it'll result in it being a bit more creative and loose. Temperature's low, it'll be extremely objective and focused on the highest probability for the next token. And you can control that just with how you prompt it. You can just say, I would like you to be very creative and uh, explorational, or I want you to be super objective and very focused on facts. Um, and some LLMs have temperature controls too, where you actually have like a slider and you can control the temperature. So you might see that in like your settings in GPT or something like that. But just be aware of what it is. And there's all kinds of advanced techniques for prompting. There's chain of thought, few shot learning, meta prompting. Ultimately, what I found is that it got a little overwhelming. So what I did was kind of synthesize them all into this master prompt, and it called itself the prompt architect. So that's its name, and it essentially is just a prompt that writes you prompts, and it has in its knowledge base all these interesting techniques. So the point there is and why I didn't spend a bunch of time here is you don't really need to memorize all of them. When you have AI, it can help you apply them and write amazing prompts for you, which is very powerful. So some of the tips and tricks I mentioned that I would give just from my experience. The first is the conversational debugger. And this is kind of what I meant when I talked about just treating the AI as a human, right? Just if it does something weird or you're unsure, like, did you actually write and or run that code that you wrote and get that result, or did you just say that? Or how did you come up with that answer? Tell me your thinking, or you seem to be repeating the same thing 3 or 4 times. What's up with that? Um, be direct, right? Just if something comes up that's weird, just ask it. It sounds really dumb, but it's been really powerful. So the defending against sycophancy, this is really important. We talked about it, and this is all about critical thinking and challenging, right? Just there's times where I'll say that's completely wrong, and I know it, and it will completely alter the nature of the dialogue, right? So, you know, again, treat it like a trusted human partner, right? Where you can be transparent with each other, right? You have that kind of productive relationship. Um, This one's interesting. We mentioned context dilution earlier about one of the problems you can run into. So this is what we called it is the context port workflow. So when that conversation starts to get really long and diluted, you can just ask the LLM in that context window. So just say, hey, I noticed like you're really starting to go off the rails here. Um, so I need to change to a new context window. Can you please summarize the details of our conversation, what we were doing, why it was important, what we've done so far? It'll output you a nice summary, copy it, open a new window, a new context window, paste it in. And then in that window, the AI is now oriented to what you were just doing, but it doesn't have all that noise that got introduced from this incredibly long ongoing conversation where you were exploring different paths that weren't quite good and you decided to go back and restart somewhere else, right? All of that is additional context that it starts to, get confused and start to just the performance degrades. It's not helpful anymore, right? So that's a great tip to get back on track when you're on in a long dialogue that's starting to go awry. Um, Transcription, I can't emphasize this enough how powerful it is. These days, I will literally spin up Google meetings myself, turn by myself, just jump in one, turn on transcription, and just randomly express whatever I'm thinking about. Hey, I have this idea. I think it could be good for this reason, and I'll just talk. And what I've experienced is that the AI is amazing at taking rough, unstructured thinking, fragmented thinking, and synthesizing it into cohesive insights or cohesive strategies or paths forward or decisions. Like it's great for meetings as well. Like I use transcription constantly and it is like a superpower. So yeah, there's just like we came up with creative ways to use AI. Think about creative ways to use transcription. And if you come up with any that are really interesting, let me know because I'm always using it. Eva, I saw your note. We have G Suite at Wex, so transcription comes inherently with Google Meets, but there are companies out there. One I use personally is called Tactic. I've seen others. One I think is called Otter AI, perhaps. But there's companies out there now that are spinning up little startups where they offer these interesting transcription tools. And what's Google just introduced recently, AI is now in Meet and it's live capturing the conversation. And you can, as the conversation is happening, you can open up a little side window and you can talk to it about what's been said, what could have been said. You can literally have, so the AI is keeping up with your conversation on the fly live, which is really amazing for extracting insights. So yeah, transcription, it's a superpower. Try it out. Context curation, this is similar to the context port. Um, Remember that what's going on in your chat, you have the ongoing context window where you're putting context into it. And the more scattered and crazy it is, the worse the performance is going to get. So instead of reacting and try what I do these days is try to think up front and be proactive about managing and curating the context so I get better interactions, right? Can be pretty powerful. And then I don't know, the most important tip I think for me is just learning loop mindset. So I don't know if any of you are familiar with double loop learning, but it's like don't just learn what didn't work and then adjust your behavior, but think about your own thinking patterns and adjust those as well, your mental models. It's kind of like if you're familiar with the observe, orient, decide, act loop. Uh, just constantly be inspecting as you're going your own way of thinking, right? And be willing to fail and adapt your own thinking, right? Be willing to try and realize like, hey, that didn't work. The way I was thinking about it might have been wrong. How could I think differently that might get me a better result? Like realize these things aren't deterministic. It's not I put in A and I get B every time. I could put in A and get anything. I could get XYZ or 159/2. They're probabilistic. So you have to embrace failing and iterating and learning as you go, which means adjusting your own mental models. And that part's just key. Like this is a new tool. People don't know what all the possibilities are. We're discovering that as we're using it, right? So like you're on the front lines of discovering what's possible with this cool new capability that humanity has just given itself. So like embrace that. Realize that like you're going to fail. Keep trying. All right. So now we're getting into the bit more of the advanced level stuff. agentic AI, and I always use air quotes because all it really is just prompt sequencing. It's just thinking in systems, deconstructing a flow, and building prompts for each phase where the output of the first prompt is the input to the next, and the output of that is the input to the next, and the output of that is the input to the next. So really what you're doing is and this is the Agile main community. You should all be familiar with value stream mapping, process thinking, that kind of stuff. Like that's essentially what you're doing. You're breaking down a complex, system into like a series of steps. And then for each step, you're just introducing a prompt that performs that step and you're linking them together. So on the next slide, I'll give you an example of one of these that I did at WEX, which was it's pretty cool. We can actually, if we have time, I'll show you it in action in Gemini. We'll see how much time we have. But um, the last point I'll make here is that this meta prompting tool that I wrote that called itself the Prompt Architect, um, it's designed to help you with that as well. So you could bring to it, it's a thinking partner. You could say, we have this process, here's kind of what goes on, and it can help, and I want to prompt sequence it, and it can help you break it down, identify the different stages, and then it can also help you write the prompts for each step. So I had it do that, right? I was giving a training, I wanted to introduce this concept, and I started thinking about, well, how do we solve problems generally, right? Well, the first thing we do is we go and we talk about like what's going on that's undesirable, right? In TOC terms, we call these undesirable effects. What are the pain points? The things that we would like to change. And then we start to think about, well, why are they happening? What are the root causes, right? So I built, so that's the first stage, is the analyst. You give it pain points, and it uses those to think about and define what is the real, this is problem identification. What's the actual problem and why is it happening? So then you take that output and you feed it into stage two. So the next logical step in solving a problem is you start to come up with options, divergent thinking, right? You start to think about what are all the things that I could do and why might they work to solve this problem and get at these root causes and produce new, better, desirable effects. And then once you come up with a range of interesting options, you get into the convergent phase of your thinking. And that's when you start to select the best solution given the specific context you're in. So I built a prompt that does that. So it takes, you know, so where we're at is we've taken in pain points and we've gotten to the core. What is the actual problem? We fed that into an ideator who then comes up with a bunch of interesting potential solutions. And then so we have a list of interesting potential solutions. And then we feed that into a validator who assesses what's actually going on in the risks and picks the optimal solution from those options and tells you why. And then once we have a solution, you feed it into the project manager prompt, which takes that solution and turns it into actionable steps to actually achieve it, right? So this is a workflow that goes on at organizations all the time. And I mean, think about how long this takes, right? Usually you're sitting with like teams and you have meetings and you're talking, for instance, in like a retro, and you're spending all this time and people's time, which is ultimately it's money for organizations, right? And then you're having follow-up meetings where you're thinking about potential solutions and coming up with how to, so all this, takes quite a bit of time. And you can do this pretty effectively in, I don't know, an hour, less than an hour. So like, and a lot of the things that, the options that it generates, you might not have thought of by yourself, right? So it's like there's all kinds of, so it's the speed and quality, right? If we're talking about like, if we're relating it to like Dora, you can have speed and quality. You actually get both. All right. So let's get into the demonstration where I'll bring up Gemini and we'll do some stuff together. So, but a quick preface, my experience has been, because I'm a TOC guy, so I think about things a lot of times in terms of constraints. My constraint to effective AI use is essentially writing great prompts, right? So that got me down this path of like, how do I overcome this constraint? How do I write better prompts faster, right? Like it's cool that I have AI, but if I have to sit there for 3 hours trying to come up with this really, elaborate prompt that like tells it all these, specific constraints and specific outputs, formats, how do I, that's going to take me longer than if I just did the thing myself. So meta prompting is a concept that was introduced to me. And then over time, I've kind of iterated on and built up this meta prompt called the Prompt Architect. And the goal, again, is to help you overcome the constraint of prompting which should unlock an insane amount of productivity with, when it comes to using AI. So I need to end this. I'll show you the prompt really quick just to give you an idea. And I actually used the meta prompt to write the prompt and refine the prompt. So eventually I used the actual prompt on itself to make this better and better. But you can see it gives it an identity. The prompt architect, you're an unparalleled expert in prompt engineering. Your core mission is to collaboratively design the absolute best, most effective, and cutting edge prompts for any task or use case. You understand blah, 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 blah. It's got core operational rules, how it's going to engage with you, what you'll experience here. And then it has this, essentially knowledge base of all these interesting prompting techniques. So role playing a persona, audience specification, tone and style. So there's all these techniques, and you can see it's 19 pages. So this is arguably getting a bit long, and it might, start to get too long, but it's still working pretty well. Remember context dilution. So I will give this, and right now I'm going to demo it, but I will give you this prompt. I highly encourage you to play with it. But remember, probabilistic. It's not going to be perfect every time. Sometimes, and this is something I'm glad I just remembered this, I wanted to call out when you're meta prompting, sometimes the AI gets confused between writing the prompt for you and actually doing the thing. So I'll be, working with it. Hey, can you help me write a prompt about how to fix my snowblower? And instead, it won't just write the prompt. It'll start taking on that persona and helping me fix the snowblower, right? So then I just have to remind it, hey, you're the prompt architect. Write the prompt for me. So be aware of that in any kind of meta prompting case. You might experience that. And again, just talk to it, remind it like, hey, you're not supposed to be taking on the persona of this thing. You're supposed to be helping me write that prompt. And usually that'll reorient it and you go from there. So here's Gemini. Here's the prompt architect. Usually I just start by saying hello. So I'm the prompt architect, an unparalleled expert in prompt engineering. My mission is to collaboratively design the best, most effective, and cutting edge prompt. Initial understanding. What is the primary goal or task you want to achieve with the AI? Or could you describe the problem you're trying to solve? Let me go back to our chat waterfall. I like the AI meal plans. I'm going to go with that one. I put together weekly meal plans for my family. I struggle to keep the menu diverse and interesting and in budget. I would like the AI to help me with that. Let's see what it says. It's a fantastic application, and we can build a prompt that acts as a highly effective, budget-conscious culinary strategist for your family. To design the absolute best prompt, one that prevents failure modes and consistently generates diverse, interesting, and affordable menus, we need to be very precise. So what's the budget constraint? Family context, how many people? Diversity constraint. All right. So one, I'd like stay under 150 a week. Two, we have 2 adults and 3 kids, ages 2, 8, and 10. 3. So I'll do this because this is a good technique as well. Sometimes, like maybe you don't know, you can just say, I'm not sure. We like to try new things. What do you recommend with regard to this? So asking the AI to provide you options is a great way to come up with interesting things that you might not have come up with. Okay, so it's got the constraints regarding diversity. Since you're open to new things, we can use an advanced technique called negative constraint prompting. I recommend we instruct the AI to exclude repetition, do not repeat a main dish or protein within a 4-week window, ensure cuisine variety, proactively introduce novelty. Sure, that sounds good. Sure, that sounds great. So then it'll write a prompt. And all I have to do is copy this entire thing Open a new chat, paste it in, send it, and now it is oriented as the budget conscious culinary strategist, and it's doing its thing. So it's giving me a plan. So now I'm going to demonstrate a little bit about when you notice something that you didn't quite like. So I have this chat window in which I just built this prompt, right? I used the prompt. I don't like that it just gave me a menu without asking me anything, right? So I'm going to go back to where I wrote the prompt and said, okay, I just used that. And instead of first engaging with me to understand my preferences for the week, spat out a plan. I'd like it to be more dialogic and engage in a conversational manner.
Ian, I have a quick question. Are you surprised that it didn't, why did it assume you only want dinner? And I don't know, just that kind of surprised me.
Did it? I didn't notice that. Let's go
Well,
look.
I don't know, maybe it did give you more. Looked like dinners to me. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday is a meal for each.
Yeah, that's a good one too. So it gives me the estimated budget, novelty and diversification confirmation, proactive suggestion. Let's ask it. We'll use one of those tips I gave you. I
Thanks.
notice you only provided me menu items for dinner, representing dinners. Why did you skip breakfast and lunch? See what it says. Ah, I intentionally focused only on dinner because the original prompt specifically requested a 7-day dinner plan.
Ah,
So that's another, we can go back to the session where we were writing the prompt and we
mm.
could tell it that too. So I just gave this prompt architect feedback. Hey, your prompt worked, but you know, it just spat out a bunch of stuff, didn't really talk with me first. So it gave me a new prompt. It's supposed to address that. This is the iteration that I mentioned, right? But let's mention what you said. The prompt also focused only on dinner. I would like help with lunch and breakfast menus as well. Notice the sycophancy, right? This is another critical point. The AI needs to reflect. You gotta, yep. Take everything with a grain of salt. Okay, so it's going to modify the prompt. So now we should have a prompt that addresses both those things. It should be more conversational. It shouldn't just spit out a thing, an entire program without talking to us, and it shouldn't, think about lunch and breakfast as well. So let's try. Do you have any specific cravings, time constraints, ingredients you need to use up, or any planned leftovers? I don't know. I have a bag of potatoes that may go bad and should be used. Uh, Other than that, I don't have uh, any specific. Let's say I have an Asian craving. I have an Asian craving. So I'd like to have some Asian cuisine in the menu. Um, let's just see what that does. So it gives me a plan. So it's acting better, right? It obviously incorporated some of the changes. It's got breakfast, lunch, dinner. It's got estimated costs. So and then so we would continue to iterate, right? Maybe this is good. I'm not really fully engaging with it either, right? I'm kind of haphazardly just tossing stuff at it. But so you can see kind of at a high level the process, right? And then if it started, if I wanted to refine it further, again, I just go back to where I wrote the original prompt. It's got all the context, and I give it what's happening, and it will write a new prompt, and you keep trying. And eventually you'll get to a place where you have something awesome. Sometimes it'll nail it on the first time. Bam, this is an amazing prompt. So what I find so powerful about this technique is that, like I just mentioned, how agentic AI, the foundation of it is stringing prompts together. Well, for that 4-stage process, I had to write 4 different prompts. To do that manually would take quite a long time. To do it with a prompt architect, I don't know, maybe an hour. So like it's pretty powerful in terms of how quickly you can spin up interesting, novel personas to help you with all kinds of different things, right? And that's kind of the point here, right? So I notice we're getting crunched on time. I'm gonna give you this prompt. Um, so let me do that. I think the chat here will allow me to send the file. Is that true, Milan?
Yeah, you can just drop it in the chat.
Okay, let me do that. And then we'll take some time for some questions. I noticed some, just noticed one. I'm struggling to edit my custom GPTs. So custom GPTs are just custom prompts. One of the things this prompt architect's good at is helping you refine and edit prompts. So you can give it an existing prompt, like an existing custom GPT, and say, hey, this is, here's the current prompt. Here's the undesirable behaviors. Can you help me change the prompt so that those behaviors don't happen, right? And then you enter that iteration phase that I was just kind of demonstrating. Give me a second, and I will drop this prompt in the chat. All right, there we go. So yeah, let me go back to my slide deck really quick. Go to the last page. So, 10 minutes left. I covered all the main points. I don't want to beat you to death with it. Really what you need to do, and this is, what I primarily say when people ask me how to improve their skills, is like you got to get in the water if you want to learn how to swim. Like go and use it. Take the prompt architect, right? So go and use it now and on whatever ideas you have and see how it goes. And let me know because I'll be really curious. Like I am learning and growing too, right? This is all new experience for me. So I'd love to hear like how it worked or how it didn't work or any of that. I've heard some pretty cool things though so far having shared it. And then just remember your mindset is everything, right? AI is not going to replace you, but it is going to augment you in a way that you will have new possibilities, things that there's no way you could have done them before in that amount of time or that level of quality. With AI as your partner, you can. You'll be amazed at what new capabilities will be unlocked for you. Like it just blown me away. I can do, I don't know, 5 times, maybe 10 times more and better than I used to be able to do. It's crazy. But the human scrutiny is key, right? Okay. What about questions? You guys have anything? If feedback's welcome as well. I love feedback to help me improve.
There's a question from Eva. I don't know if you saw that or I don't know if you answered it.
Let me look. Do you have any tips and tricks on mitigating the amount of information generated by the model and the amount of information generated by continued iterative prompting? Yeah, you can just tell it that. Say you want it, say, hey, again, goes back to the treating it like a human. Like you've been super verbose and giving me way more information than I really need. Can you like tighten up your responses from here on out to be a bit more concise because you're starting to overwhelm me? Just simple things like that. Tell it, prompt it, and it will change its behavior. You can also do that up front, like when you're writing a prompt with the prompt architect, you could put that in there and say, hey, I've experienced LLMs being really verbose and overwhelming me. I don't want this one to do that. I want it to be more conversational. I would like it to limit its responses to one answer at a time, you know, and the prompt architect will layer that into the prompt for you.
There are a few more questions, Ian.
Yeah, I'm looking for them. Are they at the bottom?
Yeah, how
Here
do
we
you
go.
automate tasks? And then there's one from John, which I think is a good one.
Yeah. So, yeah, that is a good one. Okay, so in terms of automation of tasks, right? Agentic AI is essentially this prompt sequencing concept where you break a workflow down into the stages. For each stage, you write a prompt. So you give it an initial input, it'll produce an output. You feed that output into the next stage, that output. So you can conduct this like an orchestra manually. But most of the interesting AI tooling that you'll see, and there's some out there, some of the new wave stuff, are like these designer studios where you can create these flows, almost like a process map. and each entity is a prompt that has an input. So you can design these workflows, right? And for each entity, you can put in a prompt and you can orchestrate, you can have the flow segment and pass things different ways and loop back. So they're kind of like a virtual editor for workflows where you can layer in prompt. So there's all kinds of tools out there. I would encourage you to go explore. I would encourage you to use the prompt architect to spin up an AI coach and ask it about what's going on. What are the interesting tools with regard to like sequencing and agentic AI and engage that way. And that's been powerful for me too. Learn using AI to learn about AI. I have an AI coach that teaches me all kinds of cool, interesting things. Uh, So speaking of TOC, can AI find a constraint in a value system value stream? Well, it's interesting. I built what I called at WEX we call throughput product innovation velocity. So I built a product innovation velocity helper bot, and essentially it walks you through the 5 focusing steps of TOC: identify the constraint, exploit the constraint, um, subordinate to the constraint, elevate, and then so yes. One of the things it does is it asks you, hey, do you have any data about your value stream? Can you give me that? And if you can feed in things like cycle times, overall WIP, it is quite good at identifying where the constraint is. And then it is really good at identifying how to follow the next steps. Okay, so now that we know the constraint and we know it's code review, what do we do? How do we exploit that? Okay, well, our code reviewers today, they're also doing this and they're also doing that other thing. Like they're the constraint. They should only be doing code reviews 100% of the time. So it'll help you figure out what to do. And now, okay, could you have new data now? Can you show me? Yes. Oh, it looks like the constraint hasn't shifted. Still, right? It's still code review. So the next step is to subordinate. So what does that mean, right? So, well, you have to make sure that upstream processes aren't. So anyway, you can absolutely do that. And it's pretty powerful. Uh, Susie's asking about a copy of the presentation. I know Susie from a really long time ago. Hello. Awesome to see you here. Yeah, I saw Milan was recording, so he can send the link.
Yeah, and you can send me the actual presentation. I'll include it. So I'll upload the video as well as share the PDF version of the slides.
Cool. I'm trying to go through. Can you show how to refine custom GPTs? Internal chat.
GPT.
Say again, Milan?
No, I was just joking. I was saying like you can ask, but they want you to show it. But I was saying you can ask that question in ChatGPT or to.
You should too. That is, it's like,
I did, and they said to click on the edit button, and it doesn't exist. It only says to hide it from my sidebar.
that's hilarious. Yesterday, the thing was trying to tell me this bolt on my snowblower existed that I could use to, and it just totally didn't. And I was like, "What are you talking about? That does not. You're totally off base." And then it was incredibly sycophantic, like, "Oh, I'm sorry that it was." So, yep. But I don't know. With refining those, try the architect if you're talking about refining the prompt. But yeah, if you wanted to ping me offline, I'd be glad to like meet with you and look at it and try to figure it out.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Oh, totally. So Kathy said, any advice on setting up the prompt architect? To what degree are my privacy concerns valid or perhaps overblown? Saving all my chat seems creepy. Uh, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I know that Gemini saves all your chats and they're all here in the left menu pane, going back pretty much forever. And you can search them. I don't know if GPT does. I don't know if Claude does. That's kind of beyond the architect is just a custom prompt. So you could like, in Gemini, you can build gems, and a gem is essentially just a custom prompt. And it's like you don't have, but the other thing you can do with a custom prompt though is just open a new chat and the first thing you paste in is the prompt. So custom GPTs are the same thing. They just have the prompt already there, or the AI is already oriented as whatever you want it to be. Yeah, so I mean, all the privacy concerns, they're what I'm saying is that they are relevant to all of not just the architect, but they're relevant to like any AI usage. So no
Thank you.
answer for you. No good answer for you there.
Thanks.
Sure. Can it look at team cycle times in a wider system? I bet it could. You should try it. It'd be really interesting. If you want that custom 5 focusing steps prompt, basically a throughput improver bot, I'm happy to give it to you, but you could also write one. Would you be willing to share the prompt architect AI gem? Yes, I totally will share the gem, but I don't know that Wex will let me. So this is within a Wex account. So I would just create your own using the prompt. Is there a reason you use Gemini over ChatGPT and Claude AI? No. It's all really just preferential, and Gemini is what it comes with G Suite. And because Wex leverages G Suite, it's what I've just used. I actually got myself a personal Gemini account that I pay for just so I could have it a personal Gemini, but I've used GPT and Claude and they both work great. So I don't think, it's really just whatever you prefer. I think that's it for the questions.
Yeah, we're at time, so I know that's one of the tough things when you time box, but this was great, Ian. Thank you very much. And as I said, like when I have to sit down and like actually listen, tend to pay more attention than just trying to listen to things. And this was valuable for me, and I hope others found it valuable. So this was great. Yeah, we got to do more of these, and we got to do more in-person meetings. Maybe bring in speakers to do this. We'll talk offline, but yeah, this was great.
Awesome. You should all feel free to ping me at, my Gmail address or connect with me on LinkedIn anytime you want to have a chat about any of this or other things you want to follow up on. Like, don't hesitate. I'm here to help.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
yeah, I'll share the links. Ian, when you get a chance, just email me the presentation and I'll upload the video and share it with the people that registered.
Will do.
All right. Nice to see you guys, Dave. Nice to see you. Tim, Ava,
Hey, you
everybody.
guys too.
Yeah. All right. I'll close it up and thanks again, everyone.
Thanks, Ian.
Welcome. Bye, guys.
Bye.